Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Stoughton Area School Board of Education for June 12, 2017. Becky, could you please take the roll?
Yes. Mr. Guban?
Here.
Mr. Coughlin?
Here.
Ms. Fitzgibbon?
Here.
Ms. Rudd?
Here.
Ms. Sword?
Here.
Ms. Tarpinian?
Here.
Ms. Gentry?
Here.
President Dirks is excused. Steve Jackson is excused. Vice President Brett?
Here.
Thank you.
And this is the point in the meeting where we would normally entertain comment from the public. If anyone is here that would like to address the board, we would ask you to approach the podium, state your name and address, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes. And we have several people signed up to do so. And has everyone got the policy that was on the table regarding public comment? Such as no defamation, yada yada. Passionate but polite. Take it away, sir.
Good evening. For those who don't know me, I'm David Hunt. I worked for the district 31 years, 16 of which I was a transportation director. I followed that up with 12 years on the school board, including a time as president. So I have 43 years of knowledge of school busing at all levels, especially from the top. In many states, the majority of school districts own and operate their own buses, as Stoughton has done ever since the beginning of busing in this community. The reasons why administrators should be direct employees of the district rather than of a management company, and teachers should likewise work for the district rather than an educational services company, are the same for school bus drivers to be school employees rather than be employees of a bus company. Driving school bus involves relationships far different than driving truck or an intercity bus. Many students spend more time each day with their bus driver than they do with their teacher. A lifelong friendship has often begun with their driver, who has a role in the formative years of their lives. The school bus driver has the opportunity to become a role model that few other people have. In addition, school bus drivers who are employees of a school develop a sense of teamwork with the other school employees, such as teachers, aides, and principals. So let's recruit the best transportation director we can find, from out of town if we have to, and continue Stoughton's long tradition of having one of Wisconsin's premier student transportation systems. School boards and superintendents from around the state sent bus people here to Stoughton to see how we were doing it. I mean, I again and again hosted people to show them what we were doing here in Stoughton. I mean, this was something that we have a proud record here in this community, and so therefore, let's keep it up.
Thank you. And Jonathan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Darty. I teach Spanish at SHS. I advise the GSA, and I'm here representing more than 120 SEA members tonight. I'd first like to say that we are in full support of what was just said about privatizing buses. I want to talk about two quick things in the proposed changes to the handbook. The first being the performance evaluation 50.45. Number 2, in the professional educator discipline and termination, the use of the word unsatisfactory in the full phrase unsatisfactory annual performance evaluations. Becky was kind enough to clarify what the intent is by the district, which is, quote, termination would not be a consideration unless this was a pattern, no improvement was seen, and the unsatisfactory performance continued over time. SEA is in support of that verbiage, that vocabulary being included in the handbook, and it would put a lot of minds to ease if those were included in that section. The second and last one that I'll talk about, there are others, but these are our top two, is that the SEA is firmly against the inclusion of the comp plan in the handbook. Considering that the comp plan is still in flux, the district can make any comp plan readily available without being included in the handbook. Examples in other districts are including a website in the handbook, so it can be referenced from out there. It could also be included on the school website. And in the justification for including this as a suggestion, was listed that one educator requested its addition, but multiple have contacted the SEA saying, please do not include it. It makes us very uncomfortable considering we are not in support of it, and it will most likely change. Thank you.
Thank you. And Doug Shell, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Hi, good evening. My name is Doug Shell, and just for some of the board members, you have some information about me. I'm a resident of Stoughton. I've lived here since '94. Our children have attended the Stoughton High School and graduated. Previous to working for the school district, I was a law enforcement officer with the city of Madison. I have 23 years in law enforcement. I drove the school routes for Madison Metro. I worked for Nelson Bus Service as well, and then ended up here in Stoughton. I'm here to speak a little bit for myself and the bus drivers in the Stoughton community about some concerns. A lot of the bus drivers here in Stoughton are local residents. They're alumni of the school district. They've graduated from the district. They have children that went to the district. So there's a lot of community relationships here with the staff on the bus service here. They're familiar with the coaches, the administration, a lot of the students and families. They grew up with them. So some of our concerns with outsourcing, it's a hardship. Obviously, a lot of the bus drivers are going to lose acquired sick time, Wisconsin retirement, and amongst pay cut if they were to be outsourced. Part of the big thing I see is consistency. A lot of the students now like and have consistency with the drivers that they have and know. With Nelson's, I know for a fact working there, sometimes you'll have a different driver on the morning, maybe a different one on the afternoon, and sometimes there's an information gap between drivers. Some of my concerns too, in one of the meetings that we had, it was discussed that if it takes $100,000 more and it's better for the students for safety reasons, then we can go with that, but yet no safety reasons were cited. I would think that $100,000 would go better towards maybe something in academics or athletics or some type of a scholarship program. There's really not anything that we can't do that Nelson's is doing from a safety standpoint. We have certified DOT trainer on staff right now. I'm a driver's educational instructor. Plus I have 23 years in law enforcement, so we have a lot of experience here. Many of the drivers that we have here have been driving school bus for 15 years. So when you look at that combined staffing or time on bus driving, it's not like we're just filling a seat with someone currently, I'm sure I'm missing a ton of other points that I really should talk about, but perhaps some of the other drivers might want to say something. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And the last person that signed up is Andy Clark. Is it Clark? You did. Oh, you didn't want to speak. Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Okay, well, this is obviously on our agenda, and we will be discussing it when we get to that point in our agenda, and thank you for coming and sharing those concerns. And next up is the legislative update, which it looks like there's a ton of, Donna.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna go over it all, because I think there's 28 items that I posted over the
More than
last
I've
couple
ever seen.
weeks. Well, I was asked to provide something for someone to read afterwards, so that's what I'm doing. I think there's a lot of information there, but sort of the big ticket items are the budget. And right now, the budget, the houses are sort of at an impasse between the Assembly and the Senate, because the Assembly came back with their alternative K-12 education plan, which takes about $90 million out of the proposal that Walker had made in regard to education. So last week, there was a memo that was written, a joint memo between WASB, SAA, which is the Superintendent's Association, and a couple of the Rural Alliance for Public Schools and Southeast Wisconsin Alliance. And they basically said in the memo that they would just want to retain the 200 and the 204 increases in categorical aid over the 2-year period. So that is what we will see. WASB had a very good summary that is also included here about all of the Assembly's points to the education that, whether they agree or disagree, and so I would encourage you all to read that. The other thing that's coming up that I did not have a chance, I may have put something in here. Oh yeah, the referendum restriction bills, there's 3 of them that are up for a public hearing on Thursday. If any of you have any time, it might be good for you to, I think you can just tune in with the public eye and kind of watch, and if there's anything I hear, I'll let you know. But those are 3 bills that are actually all kind of bad, I think, for all public schools. It would definitely have an impact on Stoughton because we have a recurring referendum, number 1. They want to scale that back after 5 years, and we go back, and so it creates an even greater cliff than we're going to have if we had not passed the referendum. So stay tuned, I guess is what I would say. And that's it.
Well, thanks for all that. Does anybody have questions about?
Yeah, you said it was the Assembly version of the bill that cut 90 million?
Mhm.
Okay.
From education.
From K-12?
Yeah, but the Senate they're saying they're not gonna budge,
Okay.
which I guess is a good thing, but what it does is it puts them in an impasse. There were 2 sessions on the schedule last week for the JFC, the Joint Finance Committee, to work, and they canceled them, and there's nothing scheduled yet. So they're going to have to kind of come up with what's gonna happen, but Senator Fitzgerald is on record saying that they do not have any intention of reducing the per pupil categorical aid.
Do you have something, Joe?
Oh, no, that's,
Okay, well then next up is the district administrator report.
Thanks, Joe. A couple things I have. First of all, we have 2 student groups that are currently out of district. Our German students, we have a group of them that are on their way to Germany for the GAP exchange in Graven, Germany. So they will be spending 2 weeks in Germany with their counterparts in Graven and then touring Germany. And at the same time, we also have right now a group of 8th grade students who are currently touring Washington, D.C., which is also another exciting trip. I believe board members got a link to sites that you could follow both of them. I'll double check to make sure you've gotten it because they are, both the chaperones of both trips are sharing pictures. So you can follow along on their escapades across Germany or as they are exploring our nation's capital. Next thing I had is we will be transitioning this summer away from Neptune, which you are familiar with, to Board Docs. Board Docs is, to put it mildly, Neptune on steroids. It will give us a lot more flexibility, a lot more things that we can do with board docs. The tentative plan is board docs will be transitioning everything over from Neptune to their system. We will still be on Neptune through the end of August, or actually till the last board meeting of August. We have planned a board training session August 21st, I believe, which is the board retreat. Representatives from board docs will be here to train everybody before we officially transition over. But we will be transitioning from Neptune to board docs. And again, board docs has a lot more capabilities and a lot more things that can enhance our meetings, our productivity, and some of the things that we are doing. The next thing I had is we are currently working on and updating with using the results of the strategic plan, a draft of some things that we are going to be doing, or based on the feedback we got. Anticipate as a board, we will be having some conversations, or I hope we will be having some conversations to get your feedback on what does things mean. So if you remember the blue dot activity that we ended the strategic plan with, take the one that got the most votes. The diverse needs of our students have been met through individualized education and career paths, as well as increased apprenticeship and real-world experiences. What does that mean for the board? How do you interpret that? So that gives us as administration, that gives us as a district, this is how you interpret it, this is what your vision of that statement meaning, so that we can implement plans to make that a reality. So those will be conversations that we will be having through the summer, with the hope that we will have a draft of something that we can talk about in the fall, with the ultimate hope then is early fall to bring back that group that we had on the 8th for an evening and say, this is what you told us, this is what we heard, this is where we're going from here. Are we on the right track? Have we misinterpreted what you meant? And I think it's important to get that feedback and that loop as we move forward. So I just thought I'd update you on what we're doing with the strategic plan and where we're going from there. And the last thing that I wanted to do is every year, and as part of board policy, we recognize our student rep for coming and being a part of our meetings, for their contribution. And so, Isabella, I want to, Isabella, on behalf of the board and the district, I want to present to you this check for $500 in the hope that you use it to continue your education. But I also understand that you will be joining us again next year.
Oh.
So if we can give her a round of applause to thank her. And that's all I have. Figured I'd end on that.
You ended on a positive note, that was great. Thank you, Ms. Bell. And next up is the consent agenda. Joey.
I apologize if I pronounce a name in a different way as it should be. So I move approval of the May 15, 2017 regular meeting minutes and June 5th, 2017 special board meeting. I also move approval of the May 11th through June 7th, 2017 check register as presented. We would like to say thank you to the following individuals and groups and move approval of the donation to the district. $3,500 from the Stoughton Area Community Foundation for AG Classroom - Curriculum, Mr. Bob Green Endowment Fund. $1,000 from Lisa and Douglas Olson and Lexis Argyle for the William Argyle Memorial Scholarship. $846 from Stoughton Lady Vikings Fast Break Club for girls basketball gear. $724.41 from Stoughton Viking Wrestling for January 2017 wrestling event travel expenses. $579 from Stoughton Viking Wrestling for a before scale. $500 from Stoughton Girls Youth Basketball for scholarships. $500 from the Mason Temple for scholarship. $400 from Honorary S Club, Marvin Plexi, for plaques. $268 from the Stoughton Area Community Foundation for FFA-AG Education, Mr. Bob Green Endowment Fund. 73 cents from Heidi DeBrew for prom expenses. $25 from Kent and Helen Carver for the Margaret Larson Healthcare Scholarship in memory of Case Swalheim. A curiosity sculpture to be displayed on the grounds of Keegan's Elementary from a Sanford Sirius Quiley valued at $500. Donation of a violin for student rental from Bob Christopherson. Donation of a mandolin to the River Bluff Orchestra from Gail Pizarro for folk music units, and related budget adjustment for $8,416.01. Approve a Guitar Girl Amplified Summer STEM Program grant from the Alliant Energy Foundation in the amount of $3,500, and approve a grant for travel expenses to San Francisco for the Advanced Journalism North Star students during the 17-18 school year from the EBDU Grant Foundation in the amount of $2,000. I also move approval of professional educator resignation of Mary Barr, Sean
Blythe.
Blythe, sorry, Sarah Hemmerich, Lisa Konecki, Jamie Riley, Katrina Smith, Tina Stokes, and Bray Wolf, effective at the end of the 2016-17 school year, and professional educator resignation of Paul Moser, effective immediately for the 2017-18 school year. Move approval of permanent professional educator contract for Jennifer Bartels, Riley Hornico, James Jones, Allison Ross, Jordan Sorensen, and Abby Van Arsen for the 2017-2018 school year.
So the consent agenda has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion about the consent agenda? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The consent agenda is approved. And moving on to our discussion items, transportation planning, and who will be?
Erica will be
speaking. Thank you.
I brought a clicker because I always, that mouse doesn't like me. Good evening. So at our last Finance Committee meeting, we spent some time discussing transportation planning as we move into the 17-18 school year. What I shared with them was that our department is sort of at a critical decision-making point in time. We're here tonight to share some information that we shared both at that Finance Committee meeting that we've shared with some of our employees here in the district, and some information regarding our options for how we want to function in the future. I'm here with Chris Arnett and Paula Brandel from Nelson's Bus Service, and I'm going to start off the presentation, and then they're going to also provide some additional information for everybody. I know that I put a ton of information into the board packet, and I really appreciate the time it probably you spent looking at all that information. I know it was a lot. So I just want to talk a little bit about where we've been over the last year. In 2016-17, unfortunately, we were faced with a little bit of a crisis where our current transportation coordinator left the district on a medical leave of absence in December. We now know that he will not be able to return to his position here in the district. We are also, when I looked at the numbers and I look at our total number of bus drivers in the district, we ended the school year with about 4 fewer drivers available compared to last year at the same point in time. Hiring bus drivers is definitely a challenge for school districts throughout the state of Wisconsin. A lot of places are facing shortages. Again, it's not unique to Stoughton, but definitely a reality in school districts all over the place. Since our coordinator has been out, we have had a number of unforeseen circumstances that did result in fewer drivers than we had last year. And we have relied on Nelson's bus service to provide some of our transportation to accommodate all of our trip needs. So the spring sports season tends to be our busiest time of year in terms of trips that are occurring not only after the school day, but we also have field trips during the school day. So it's a very, very busy time. We did contact some other bus companies too to see if they could help us out, and no one else responded that they were willing or able to help us. So again, as we look at our options for next year, what do we want to do moving forward? There are two typical options in school districts when it comes to providing transportation services. Historically, we have our own buses and we have operated our transportation internally. When you look at the other option, it would be to contract with a bus company to meet the district's transportation needs. I did contact the Wisconsin School Bus Association, and they don't have specific numbers, but they estimate that about 75% of schools in Wisconsin do contract out their transportation services. So in any time of transition, it does make sense to analyze the options to see what makes the most sense. It's my job to bring forward information to the board to help in that decision-making process. And Tim has charged all administrators that anytime there is a position that's vacant, prior to filling that vacancy, we need to do an analysis to see if that's something that we want to move ahead with. So really, I boiled it down to two options. Status quo would be to keep our transportation service in-house, and then the second option would be to look at contracting with a professional bus company for our transportation needs. So when we look at the difference between the two options, there's a lot of things to look at and consider. And again, I did put a lot of information in your packet for you to take a look at. As I've been working more closely with this department over the last 6-7 months, I've learned a lot about how we kind of function internally. And then I also had to do some research to see what, what's typical for districts that contract out their service. I talked to a lot of my counterparts in other districts to find out what they're doing. And then again, the partnership that we had with Nelson's to do some of our trips also provided me some information. Regardless of what option we pursue, we live in a reality of a finite budget. We do need to look at our total cost, whether we do it in-house or whether we do it externally. And I approached this entire process by looking at how can we make either work within that same budgetary framework. I wasn't necessarily looking at finding ways to significantly reduce costs. It was really looking at how we could keep a similar budget in place without having to sacrifice quality or service for our kids. Again, I mentioned that the staffing impact is a reality. Again, all districts are struggling to find the right kind of people to work in this very important role. And expertise when it comes to hiring is important. And then I looked at our infrastructure too, and I tried to compare that to the alternative of contracting. Again, what are we doing in terms of training? What is our protocol and how we address safety needs and improvements? And we all know that our customers and our stakeholders are ever changing, so how are we also evolving to meet our kids' needs? So this was just a really brief summary of all that information that I provided to you ahead of time, but after the work that I did and the analyzing of the information that I pulled, I did land on a recommendation to pursue a 3-year agreement with Nelson's Bus Service to provide transportation services to the district and maintain ownership of our district fleet. So why? Like I said before, we have worked with Nelson's this spring, but our partnership with them does go quite a ways beyond the last couple of months. We have primarily purchased our buses from Nelson's, and I know they'll talk a little bit about that side of their business when they're up here. But we have purchased buses from them in the past, and we have used them for some maintenance needs as well. For those of you that were in the district when our bus garage collapsed, it's probably close to 10 years ago at this point in time, they did provide a number of buses to us to help us out of that jam when we were waiting until we could actually use our existing buses again. There is that historical trust with them. They philosophically align with where we are in the district. They really do focus on safety and students first, which aligns with where we are as well. And they are only looking to grow their business in this area when it makes sense for both the district and for them. They currently only contract in 3 different districts and have only pursued those relationships when it makes sense. The time frame, again, we are kind of in a unique situation with the circumstances surrounding our current transportation coordinator. Typically, when districts look through, going through a proposal process, that process would start in the fall, usually in October. And then if they were going to pursue a proposal, they would definitely start no later than January. And here we are in June, needing to do something for next school year. As we've looked at our options, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but our goal was to do so within that similar cost framework as to what we're currently paying. And the access to resources, we currently have 1 mechanic, 1 coordinator, and a half-time admin assistant to handle the day-to-day operations in this area. And if we'll get to further along, we'll get to some of the specifics, but we would have access to more resources if we were to create a partnership with Nelson's. They have a comprehensive training program. They have expertise in their industry as it relates to recruiting and hiring. There would be dispatch services, and they have employees that they spread those responsibilities out amongst, so that way it doesn't all fall on 1 or 2 people. And they do have a person that's designated for safety coordination to work with drivers. And then for each of their locations, they have a specific terminal manager. And then again, they have 1 person on staff, I believe, that's specifically designated for route design to look for efficiencies within those routes and ways that they can use their expertise to determine whether or not there's ways we can change those routes to get kids, on and off the bus more quickly. And again, it's not that we aren't doing some of these things, but these responsibilities are placed on a fewer number of people. I think our rain has arrived. And again, this concept was really kind of contingent upon an agreement that would be sustainable within our budget. We want to be financially responsible, and we want to make sure that we also don't sacrifice quality in that process. Transitional goals. Anytime you make a transition like this, the goal is to have it to be as smooth as possible. We want that to be smooth for both families and our current staff members. And again, I've mentioned this a couple of times, we want to work within our current budget. This is something that I just firmly believe in for all of my departments, that we need an eye on continuous improvement for both the department as well as the district as a whole. And ideally, we want to be staffed and ready to roll for the 2017-18 school year. So what about our staff? Nelson's has agreed to provide employment opportunities for all of our existing staff members. They would have to have a valid CDL with an S&P school endorsement, which is, again, these are requirements for drivers for us as well. They'd have to pass a drug screening as well as a background check. And I know Chris will highlight this a little bit later, but there are also some opportunities available for additional hours for drivers that we don't currently offer, just based on the nature of their specific business. All right, and at this point, I'm going to ask Chris and Paula to come on up. There you go. Yep, you're welcome.
Good evening. As Erica said, my name is Chris Arnett, and I'm the president of Nelson's Bus Service Incorporated. I have with me here tonight Paula Brandel, who is our Human Resources and Corporate Relations Manager. I would like to provide you with a little bit of background as to who we are as a company. Nelson's is both a school transportation contractor and a dealer or distributor of Thomas-built buses. As some of you know, and Erica mentioned, historically we've been a provider for new school buses, parts, and service to the Stoughton Area School District. In addition to our dealership operations, We are also the student transportation provider for more than 4,000 students in the Whitewater Unified, McFarland, and Monona Grove School District. Excuse me. Building on our history, vision, and mission statements, Nelson's remains focused on safety and education of children. Our united efforts begin with pride. We encourage our team on a daily basis to be proud of the opportunities our partnerships offer, and we realize we are not only providing children transportation, we are truly an extension of their education. Due to our deep commitment to service our customer, Nelson's will continue to be a premier family-owned, family-run business to work with and to work for. We feel that this can only be accomplished by being responsive, professional, personal, and engaging in knowledgeable interactions with our customers, and by providing quality products and services on time that meet or exceed our customers' expectations. Next, I would like to provide a brief review of a few key milestones of our company. The company was founded in 1940 by my business partner's late grandfather, W.C. Nelson. In 1974, the company acquired a small territory in southern Wisconsin in which to sell and service Thomas-built buses. From 1974 until 1997, there were 2 Thomas-built bus dealerships in the state of Wisconsin. In 1997, Nelson's acquired the rights to expand our territory in which to sell and service Thomas-built buses, to now include the entire state of Wisconsin, northern Illinois, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. The company transitioned into its 3rd generation of family ownership in 2005 when Dave Nelson and I purchased the business. In 2007 marked the first time the company expanded to include a 2nd location with the acquisition of RMA Bus Service Incorporated. Through this acquisition, we began transporting the students from McFarland School District. In 2010, Nelson's was honored by receiving the Thomas-built Buses Dealer of the Year Award. This award is presented annually to the most outstanding dealer who demonstrates performance and customer service satisfaction, customer service, and support second to none. In 2011, after several years of research to find the ideal location and a year of construction, Nelson's opened our new location on Highway 12 and 18 in the town of Cottage Grove. This location was purpose-built and houses both dealership and student transportation contract operations. In 2014, we began our partnership with the Monona Grove School District. This expansion was partially achieved by the facility project completed in 2011, as well as the solid partnership that was formed with the McFarland School District since 2007. Our most recent company milestone came this spring. In April of 2017, Nelson's was honored by achieving a certification of Platinum Support by Thomas-built Buses. This certification is only awarded to the most outstanding dealers within the Thomas Dealer Network. As a Platinum Support certified dealer, Nelson's is recognized in the school bus industry as a leader in operational efficiency, customer satisfaction, customer service, and technical support. In fact, Nelson's was the first dealer to certify 2 locations simultaneously, and the only dealer so far to include their transportation contract operations. As a community partner with students, parents, coaches, teachers, district officials, we recognize that our team is an extension of the school district. In many cases, we're the first and last point of contact with children on a daily basis. The visual that I have on screen is an attempt to summarize what we feel is our role within the school district. I'm using the school district as that all-encompassing circle in which these pieces each have a place within the circle. Each element has individual, unique things happening within the district. However, when you start adding in all the individual pieces, one can quickly start to identify that there is an overlap that develops. We feel that it is important to understand the significance of the area where all of these items overlap. We also feel that it is important to recognize how all of these pieces overlapped and impact one another, and how they interconnect, as well as how collaboration is the key to our success. So, what should one expect with a partnership from Nelson's? One should expect, first and foremost, to work with a professional team and a company that's in its third generation of family ownership. A company that has two owners that grew up in the pupil transportation industry. A company that is only looking to develop partnerships that are ongoing and long-term. One should also expect to work with a team that has very high expectations. And we are very proud of our long-standing relationships with our customers. And we feel that is a direct reflection of our commitment to excellence and by always doing what is right on a daily basis. We are a company that reinvests heavily back into our business in all facets, from our employees to our capital investments in asset replacement and preventative maintenance. Simply put, we will not cut corners, whether that be in training a new driver to repairing a vehicle. One of the most recent projects that is in progress is the production of our own designed and produced safety video training series. CDL requirements can and do change rapidly. Many of the employee study aids available in the market today are outdated and too general in content. With that, the team brought a proposal to create our own series of video training aids to enhance an employee's training experience. This project is a collaborative effort between multiple divisions within our company, as well as a community partner, UW-Whitewater Media Services, who will actually be filming and editing the video series. When the project is complete, our safety team will be able to effectively and efficiently update the training videos when changes occur in the industry. I had mentioned the district will work with a professional team. We are fortunate to have a great group of individuals with very unique skill sets and a very diverse background. We currently have the equivalent of 10 full-time employees that have daily responsibilities in our transportation operation. That is counting Paula as a 0.5 full-time equivalent, and that does not include myself, my business partner, or our company's general manager. As our company has experienced growth in recent years, when we have been able to develop specialized positions, which allows our employees to gain expertise in certain areas. As an example, we have individuals like Paula, whose expertise is in human resources, such as employee recruiting and retention. We have team members that excel at customer service, employee scheduling, trip scheduling and coordination, safety training, driver training, and terminal management. Some of our team members excel at more than one of these skills. However, we have the ability to work as a team and feed off of one another's strengths in time of need. Our structure does not demand that one or two people are able to do everything. Finally, one should expect to work with a partner who's in this for the long haul. I am proud to say that just last week, we completed our 77th consecutive year of student transportation for the Whitewater Unified School District. And next, I would like for Paula to discuss some of the unique opportunities that a partnership would create for current school district employees. Thank you.
Good evening. As Erica mentioned, we are committed to making this a successful partnership. Again, everyone will have an opportunity for employment at Nelson's. Anyone interested will need to go through the application process and make sure they meet the legal requirements to become or to be a school bus driver. This also allows us to meet our requirements to build the driver qualification files that are required. I would also like to further expand on some of the opportunities that are not currently offered in the district. As you have heard, a large part of Nelson's business is the Thomas Built Buses dealership operations. In addition to our part-time and full-time positions, we also offer what is called a hybrid position. For example, a person can drive an AM and PM route and also have opportunities for additional hours assisting our dealership operation. Currently, we have folks that fuel buses and wash buses in addition to their regular driving responsibilities. We also have a gentleman currently working in our parks department in between his routes. In the summer, there are also needs in the area of new bus prep, cleaning and detailing, video camera installation, and deliveries. This week, we actually have 8 drivers who are preparing to travel to Greensboro, North Carolina, to transport new buses back to our dealership for delivery onto the final customer. There are also hours during the summer months for charter work. We need drivers for activities such as summer camps, Boy and Girl Scouts, and church groups, just to name a few. As I mentioned on the previous slide, we have individuals that dedicate their time to cleaning our buses. Drivers can expect to have their buses cleaned on a weekly rotation. We often hear wonderful feedback from our driver team, especially when they go on trips. It is not uncommon for our drivers to have other team members or other drivers from school districts and companies around the state stop and see them while they're on trips to check out their beautiful buses. This builds a sense of pride and ownership for our drivers. We also find it builds a similar sense of pride for our teachers, coaches, and students. As Erica and Chris mentioned earlier, we do have an incredibly talented team of individuals who work together to ensure our drivers' needs are supported. 2 critical components that contribute to our success in supporting our team of drivers are expertise and communication. When our team of experts work together and communicate clearly, we all win. We strive to achieve communication excellence within our organization and with our district partners. You also heard a little bit about our professional development that Nelson's offers. Investing in our drivers is a priority at Nelson's. Here you are seeing a sample of some of the professional development opportunities we provide for our driver team. We enjoy having guest speakers at our safety meetings periodically throughout the year, and we have found our district partners provide essential training to our drivers, particularly surrounding student management techniques. The school bus rodeo is a concept our safety team came up with 3 years ago. They took the concept and they developed an outstanding training opportunity for our drivers. They collaborated with Chris Arnett, Dave Nelson, our service team, and experts outside of the organization to produce a unique learning environment that allowed drivers to enhance their knowledge and their skills. Drivers have experienced obstacle courses. They have had learning sessions with representatives from the railroad and the federal DOT. Each year is a little bit different. Last year, they got to practice the new warning light system with a trainer and practice the CDL backing tests with a third-party tester. The rodeo and the addition of the new training materials that Chris had spoke about earlier could not have happened without our dynamic safety team who have specific expertise and responsibilities. Our collective team of leaders lends itself to operational excellence and creative training and development. As times have changed, contractors and school districts alike have had to become more creative when recruiting and hiring drivers. We have many traditional drivers who drive an AM and PM route. However, we also have drivers who may only drive an AM or a PM route as a secondary income. We are flexible and we work with a variety of schedules. Our drivers are guaranteed a 2-hour minimum for routes. They are compensated actual time for all of their trainings and meetings. We have primary driver teams who serve the district they are hired for respectively. We advocate for consistency with our students and our district partners. With that being said, our staffing levels allow us to help each other out when needed. This has been a vital part of our success, particularly during the heavy trip season when multiple sport buses are overlapping our regular route times. This is also how Nelson's was able to offer support to the Stoughton Area School District this past spring. We recognize and greatly appreciate the years of service the Stoughton Area School Bus drivers have dedicated to the school district. Experienced drivers on the road is beneficial for the community and for Nelson's bus service. Although drivers will have a hire date, drivers can expect that their hire date with the district will be their seniority date that will be used. Again, Stoughton Area School District will have their own respective driver team who will be driving their routes and primarily covering all of their trips. We had the opportunity a couple weeks back to meet with the drivers, and we asked them this question: why do you do this? We received a couple different answers, but all of those answers focused around the children and their safety. So, why do we at Nelson's take on this immeasurable responsibility on a daily basis? We are a team made up of pride-driven individuals who are passionate about the education and safe transportation of children. In closing, I would just like to add that we feel confident that our experience, expertise, and commitment to excellence is a great match to the Stoughton Area School District's individual wants and needs. On behalf of our entire team, we look forward to the opportunity to continue the partnership with the Stoughton Area School District. As your partner, we will strive for excellence and continuous improvement on a daily basis. Thank you very much for your time this evening, and now we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Allison?
You said that you offer full-time positions. How many full-time positions are available? How easy would that be for one of our staff to get if they were to apply?
Sure. Do you want me to answer them? Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. So we do have cleaning positions available. When you ask how easy, when we think about this district and if this partnership were to move forward, we know that we would need to add a few full-time positions to this area to support it. And there's, again, some of that hybrid as well for that additional hours, depending on what people may be looking for.
So would it be the same, because I know one of the things I was looking at in the comparison was there were benefits that didn't kick in until 30 hours a week. So, you know, if they had a hybrid position, would that work through the summer when there are fewer routes? What are the guaranteed hours?
Yes, great question. So our hybrid positions typically are a position where somebody's looking for additional hours, but often still enjoy some of the flexibility with their schedule and are not considered full-time. We also have the full-time where somebody may, where we design a position where they are driving and, let's say, cleaning the bus. They're 40 hours a week, 30 to 40 hours a week, but they would maintain that at least minimum of 30 throughout the summer. So the commitment on the driver side would also need to be there in order to maintain that full time.
John?
How much would this, or how much would absorbing our busing operations expand your daily busing system?
As far as what?
Like in a just a like a
Percentage
percentage or
increase?
something, yeah.
We currently operate about 75 routes per day, and everything that I've seen from the information is it would probably increase it by about 25%.
Okay. Do you expect that you would have to hire additional support staff to be able to? Okay. Do you have an estimate for how much that might, how much of a burden that might put on you guys, and what kind of a, how is the hiring process, and is that something that you would be able to be ready for by the end of or the beginning of the school year?
Sure.
I've actually been supported in the last couple of years to start adding positions before they were necessary. So we do have some people in training when opportunities arise. However, I wouldn't say that that would be that commitment, because we would also want to look at what resources may be available within the district currently, but we do have the ability to step in with current staffing if necessary.
I have a number of questions. So what I'm hearing is our current drivers aren't guaranteed jobs. They're not guaranteed jobs.
They would have to
Would
meet
have
the
to
legal
apply.
requirements. Yes, they
But
have.
according to what I heard is that we have the same criteria as Nelson's does for,
The legal
Or the legal-
requirements are
or
the
legal
same,
requirements.
yeah.
the question is, what have we been doing to try to, it sounds like this has been a problem all year. So what specifically has the district been doing to try to recruit more drivers to recruit? How much work has been done related to that?
We haven't done a lot of work above and beyond what we typically do when we're posting for bus driver positions. We've had a position posted for a driver out on weekends since February. If we were to move into the summer and need to hire additional drivers, which we would look at other local resources. I know in the past we've posted it in the paper. I'm not sure how effective that is in this day and age. We've worked with Becky on other non-educator type positions in the past to look at other resources to recruit. I do know that we have been fortunate in that people have, they kind of stepped up toward the end of the year here just to make sure that we were able to cover things as needed. Again, we ran into some challenges with some trips, and we had to look at, we did contract to provide the transportation for a number of our trips this spring as needed. But we frequently have driver positions out and available for people to apply.
What is our decision timeline here? Because we have to get a decision made here.
Yeah, the hope would be, we have this conversation, we have a closed session after the board meeting, and the hope is that we would have some direction about whether or not we would like to look at a sample contract at the next board meeting.
You done, Tim?
For now, yeah.
Okay. Julie?
So I have a lot of questions, but one is, so driver shortage is the problem not only in Wisconsin, it seems like it's nationwide. And it looks like even companies have been affected by it, right? So how, if we are having a shortage of drivers, and you guys have been having the same problem, how you expect that problem will be solved by absorbing our drivers? Just like, I don't see, I don't know how to, I don't know if you understand the question, but I don't see that the problem will be solved.
I don't think the problem of bus driver shortages will be solved by what we're proposing, but I think they can speak to what they do in terms of their recruiting and hiring process and the expertise they have in that area. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. So we do actively recruit, and I would be very honest in telling you it's not easy for us either. It is a difficult market right now to find part-time school bus drivers. We typically find them in their community, just like your driver team here. We spend a lot of time in our communities. That's where we do a lot of our recruiting, is within those community atmospheres. What I would say, as for how do we help overcome it, it is with those additional resources we have on staff, including those hybrid positions, and also our full-time positions. People at that point are able to have a more steady income, and that has definitely helped us overcome the driver shortage that the nation is experiencing.
But it's still, if you're able to find drivers even from around here, why we cannot?
Our primary area of expertise in recruiting and retaining employees falls more into the area of educators. We have tools available we have tools available that we use to attract educators. It's very common throughout the state of Wisconsin for educators to go to WeCan for opportunities for employment. We don't have a similar kind of system for bus drivers. It's not as common for districts to hire their own bus drivers. Again, and I don't know how, we're not gonna solve the problem of the shortage with this solution. It doesn't mean that because they take it over, they're magically gonna find more drivers. It's just that some of the opportunities that exist with Nelson's might be a way to attract some additional people that we can't currently offer.
Well, Erica, who was doing the hiring for the drivers? Was it the coordinator? Was it Becky? It was the coordinator. And is that position still open? Are we actively looking for a coordinator at this point, or we're stalled?
Yes, it's been posted.
Where?
On Weekend. I did advertise for it on the WASBO website as well as the Wisconsin School Bus Association website.
One of the, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry to
One of the
interrupt.
things that I have been reading a lot about this because it actually affected my job in terms of, it was really difficult to find driver for the after-school program when I was working with them. So I have been reading a lot about this, and I have seen also partnerships among the school district where they kind of form their own I don't know if you call it academy or whatever it is, but they grow their own drivers. So they kind of solve that kind of problem in partnership with other school districts too. Have you, or have the district thought about that at all, or looking for some other solutions, not only, and I don't have anything against Nelson or anything. I think if I didn't have a job, I probably would go with you. But it's just that there are some other alternatives maybe, and have we explored other alternatives?
I'm not sure I understood the example you just gave.
There have been partnerships among the school districts where they help each other to, I call it, grow their own drivers, because they call, like for example, in some school districts, the high school students that graduate are able to even take the same training and start driving the school buses after they have done the training and everything. So they avoid that shortage by making sure they have people from the community to then later work as drivers.
I've not heard of that, so no.
I'm
that's
just
not
saying
something-
that that's
we have
what I
not
have read.
explored that.
Okay.
I'll just be honest, yeah.
Any other idea that besides transferring the school drivers to a company has been explored?
No, the primary options we looked at is either keeping it in-house or looking externally. And part of, again, when I look at the total infrastructure and maybe, I mean, that was kind of what I highlighted in some of the stuff that was in the packet, but it wasn't just about who hires or employs the employees, it was more about how can we expand our capacity to address the complex needs that exist in this department. Because I will be honest, with 2.5 people, I feel like there are some real challenges in doing all the things that we believe we would like and should do. Yeah.
So I have a logistical question. So if we were to go with Nelson's, technically, the drivers driving our students every day would work for Nelson's, not the district. So if there's an incident on a bus, a behavior incident, a situation where a bus driver, God forbid, does something they shouldn't appropriately, whatever, what is the process that's going to be used to address that, given these are Stoughton students? We don't technically have the supervisory authority over them because they work for Nelson's. So how does that work?
We do have discipline procedures that we follow as well. When we have a situation with a driver, oftentimes, not always, but certainly if it's been something that's brought to our attention, a lot of times there's already district partnership as well that's going on. But if there's things that we identify, whether there's students on the bus or not, if they're doing something that isn't appropriate or legal or whatever that may be, we do have steps in place to, procedures in place to address misconduct, write them up, potentially terminate if necessary.
Hypothetically, if I'm a parent and I have a concern about something on the bus, I'm going to pick up my phone and call my son or daughter's principal. what are they going to do? Are they going to call you, or how does that, that seems like a lot of hoops to jump through.
So, I can give you an example of what we do now.
Sure, and I would just say, like, if that happens now, typically parents will often, well, look, they could call the principal or they may call our transportation coordinator. If they call the principal's going to direct them back to the transportation department. So I believe, and you can speak to what you're currently doing, we'd have a terminal manager here on site. Either the call would go directly to the terminal manager or it would go to the principal, who would then transfer it as they would do now. I don't see that that process would be that dissimilar to what we're currently doing. And maybe, Paul, you can speak to what happens in other districts that you work with.
It's typically the process. If a parent has a concern, sometimes they will go directly to the principal, but often if it's on the school bus, we receive that call. And then we have the ability to pull video to review that, talk with the driver. And we have, again, really good partnerships with all of our principals. They work together incredibly well to identify any issues and follow up with them.
I think John had his
sorry.
hand up first.
Oh, no, go for it, Donna.
Along those same lines, could you talk about discipline with students? I know that we've had some issues in the past. We've had some difficult spots and routes, and we put a lot of pressure on our drivers to manage that. I spoke with someone who drives for you and said that you have a no tolerance policy. I mean, it's like 3 times and you're out type of a deal. Can you explain that a little bit and tell us, how you've evolved to that point?
Absolutely, and I will be completely honest with you and tell you it does filter back to the school specifically that student attends, because that partnership is so good with the principal. So we pride ourselves in really taking care of our drivers, teaching them the importance of communicating when there is a misconduct concern on the bus and not just keeping it in, because we need to make sure we're communicating back to the schools and we have a support system around that student. Many of our principals that we currently work with are very supportive, and each one has a little bit different variety in how they handle it. But we do very similar process to what's currently done here. A student misconduct report is written up and it goes through the Infinite Campus program, and it sends an email directly to the principal of that student. The principal then calls that student into the office and they work with the student to get to the bottom of what's going on. They are also the individual that ultimately determines the resolution. So we do not kick kids off the bus, we don't suspend them, we don't do any of those things. We work with those district administrators very closely so that we can help monitor the situations.
I think that we had this discussion years ago when we were updating our bullying policy, and we talked about bus stops being an extension of the school district. Even though it's not on district property, the same rules applied, whether it was, in someone's driveway or not. So it sounds like you're saying the bus is an extension of school.
Absolutely.
And, whether they're district employees or not, it's still a district issue. And this driver was from McFarland, so they must have the strict policy. 3 times you're out. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
John?
Yeah. So going along with, Tim mentioned employee disciplining or, problems with your bus drivers. Do you guys maintain records of any of that?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And is that something that you provide to the districts that you serve right now, or are they just internal records?
I have not had that request.
Okay. Okay. That's it.
Other questions? Julie?
What is the impact, besides losing the Viking pride from the drivers? What is the impact on our drivers once they say they all are able to work for you? What would be other things that either lose negatively or positively by doing the change?
Well, one of the things that we're slated to talk about in our closed session is the potential financial impact. Are you talking beyond that?
Well, how would they be impacted by the change? I don't need to know numbers. I just
You talking retirement, those kinds
Oh,
of things?
that kind of things.
Benefits?
Benefits, all that.
Okay, so what,
Would
we
it be a
have-
better condition?
What?
Would it be a better condition for them, or
Well, right
just
now,
normal?
we have 9 drivers that are eligible for WRS, based on the hour requirement, or if they were eligible. The hour requirements for WRS has changed over the years. It used to be a lot fewer, and now it's up to 880, so we have 9 drivers that are currently eligible out of the 23. So for those employees, that would no longer be an option. We offer a 403B plan and a 457 plan, but there is no employer match. Nelson's, and I believe this was all in the information I sent to you, but Nelson's does offer a 401K, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you match up to the first 3% dollar for dollar, and then 0.5% for the next 2%. So if an employee contributes 5%, then they match 4%. So that would exist there if the employees choose to contribute. We currently have 2 employees that are on the insurance. I take that back, we have 2 drivers that are on the insurance. We have a 3rd employee that is also on the insurance, that's not a driver. And so we would have to look at what options might exist for those employees if they need to continue that insurance. We currently have a 2-hour minimum for our routes, as does Nelson. The rates may vary, but again, we'll talk about that as part of the actual contract. And currently, the rate that we pay for trips, we pay the same rate for trips the entire time that the driver drives, as well as the entire time that they're at the event. Nelson's does the same. The trip rates are different. But I know one of the things I've learned is that some contractors have a different rate of pay for drive time versus sit time. So they do offer one consistent rate of pay for trips as well. I'm just trying to think. One of the things we talked about at our driver meeting was the concern around being able to retain a route for somebody that's been driving the same route for many, many years. It would be our intention to continue with that same person on that same route. I don't feel there's any benefit in disrupting when we don't need to disrupt. I'm trying to think of some of the other things we talked about at our drivers' meetings that were specific to the seniority date was an important piece that I felt like people were concerned about, not starting over with their seniority so that that date of hire for the district would transfer over. I did have a communication with one employee as a follow-up to that. There was some concern, and I found that this would be the case for more than one person. Their initial hire date in the district is one date and then have since been rehired. For example, we have some people who were here retired so they could start collecting their WRS and then were rehired the next school year. And it would be our intent their break in service was for the most part over the summer months, so the intent would be to use their original hire date instead of that rehire date. So I did communicate with one person about that. Just trying to think. I mean, those were some of the key things that we talked about. There would be, again, Nelson does have monthly safety meetings. They have some summer trainings that we maybe aren't currently doing, so that could potentially be some additional time commitment for those folks.
Allison?
So for our drivers in the district, just with the information you gave us, the WRS eligibility is 880 hours, and that was what you just said.
Yeah.
And then 9 or 10, actually meeting that requirement that new hires don't typically meet the hours requirement. So what, I guess where I'm really going with it is how many hours are our drivers working? Do we have a range and a median?
Depends. Most drivers work, they have a morning route and an afternoon route, and again, they get the 2-hour minimum pay for that.
Okay.
Some drivers do a midday route for like our 4K students, so those folks would have 6 hours. We do have one person that's paid for 8 hours, but for the most part, it's 4. We have, I know maybe 1 or 2 people that do 2 hours a day, and then we have a couple people that are subs. And that can fluctuate throughout the year depending on, if somebody is out and we need to reassign a midday route or something like that. But for the most part, it's usually the morning and the afternoon routes. And then there's trips in addition to their routes.
Sarah?
If we
Are you
decide
done,
not,
Allison?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
if we decide not to go with Nelson's, what do we as a district need to do before the fall?
We would need to hire a transportation coordinator and some drivers and start working toward what we want to do to, you know, continue our improvement efforts and get ready for school.
How easy is that?
I don't know. Like I said, we have had our coordinator position posted. I have 7 applicants. 3 are internal. Of the 4 that are not internal, none of them have any experience in transportation. So that's concerning.
Just a follow-up question. You have been absorbing a lot of the duties of the coordinator since we haven't had one.
Well, I have to give credit where credit is due. I've done some, but Julie Speth, our administrative assistant, who is part-time, has been working full-time since, I don't know, for months. And then our drivers have really stepped up, and Andy, our mechanic, has really helped out a lot too. So I can't take all the credit as
But
group
it's
effort.
fallen on other folks.
Yeah,
I mean,
for
it's,
sure.
so
Absolutely.
it's, we have been doing that, so it's not as if you don't understand what's necessary to do the job and to do it well.
I feel like I've definitely learned a lot, and I have a great group of support people that have helped to really learn what is needed and what's important. Yeah.
And just one more follow-up, if I can. This kind of piggybacks on Yoli Beth's question about why don't we partner with some other districts? It kind of sounds like Nelson's that is that partnership, because you're doing it with McFarland and now Monona Grove. Do you know of other districts kind of in Dane County around us? How many do contract out? I know that you came from DeForest, and DeForest is now subcontracting.
Cobeson, they're with Cobeson.
And, but like some of the, do you know just like, what's Oregon doing?
They contract.
Okay, what's Deerfield doing?
Contract.
What's another one that's close by here? Cambridge, what's Cambridge doing?
Contract.
Edgerton.
Contract. Mount Horeb and I think Middleton Cross Plains are the only 2 that I know of in the area that still do their own.
And they are sort of Cross Plains, meaning Cross Plains, Middleton Cross Plains, because
yeah.
they've got a pretty big district that they can fall on those resources. Mount Horeb is kind of isolated, I would think. Verona, that's going through Madison? Okay. All right, thanks, that's helpful.
Anyone else?
So, yeah, so I'm still confused about the process. So we're going to be going into closed session to decide on it, if we're going to go do this or not?
No, closed session is to talk about actual details of a contract that.
In terms of what it would look like.
In terms of what it looked like, that when you negotiate a contract, if we would negotiate a contract, you don't want to discuss those terms publicly. The actual decision for whether the district would go with this wouldn't take place until probably the next meeting. So no decision would be made tonight about going or not going with Nelson.
I have one last question.
Sure.
When you were saying like Verona and all these districts contract out, did they contract the buses and have their own drivers, or contract everything?
I believe they all contract everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Tim, you look like you're stewing.
So I guess I just want to make it clear, we're not making a decision in this meeting tonight.
No.
Or in the closed session.
No.
So we might come up in this closed session with a contract we like, but it doesn't, if at the next meeting we decide we don't want to do this.
Correct. No decision will be made tonight.
Well, I guess the one question, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just
We got a lot of
thing.
questions.
So,
That's all right.
yeah.
We need to turn the heat up in here, though.
One is just a general comment, and this kind of got bounced out of the finance committee a little bit without making a recommendation. So we kind of skipped that part just a little bit. And then I guess the other thing I'm wondering is just looking at the comparison of benefits. It's concerning that there's, that I'm looking at the paid sick leave. And I'm wondering how you manage that, because obviously we don't want to have drivers showing up ill to drive a bus full of kids.
So we do not offer paid sick time. However, we do support our drivers. If they are not in good condition to come in and work, we will fill their routes. It's unpaid time off in our company, but they certainly have the ability to take that time off if they need to, and we can cover the route for them.
Is there a certain point that it triggers disciplinary action?
Just trying to think through any examples. I would say typically no. However, there are cases where we have individuals that may be abusing that system and creating a hardship. And in that case, I would tell you that we have had to have conversations with individuals.
Yeah, it looks like the drivers also have questions, and I'm not normally the person running the meeting, but can somebody help me explain how this works and why we can or cannot?
Normally, by the policy and by how the board meeting and the structure of the board meeting, public comment is just that. The public has the opportunity to comment at the beginning of the meeting. The rest of the meeting is the board meeting. It's the business meeting. And so therefore, board, by its format, does not take public comment and questions and interactions throughout the meeting.
So we apologize for that being the way that it is. I do have sort of one question. This would be a 3-year commitment, is that correct?
That's what I was looking at initially, a 3-year commitment, and that we would retain ownership of our buses. Again, when districts look to own their own operation, the biggest hurdle is attaining the assets. The cost of the buses can be pretty significant. So I felt like that would at least give us that opportunity if we decided after 3 years that it wasn't successful and we wanted to bring it back in-house, we would still own those buses, which would help eliminate that initial challenge.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking about the 3-year commitment is that we're also in the process of talking about grade configuration at the elementary level.
Yep.
Which would vastly complicate our transportation needs and systems. And I guess I'm wondering, for the whole board to consider whether it's better for us to absorb that with our transportation system in-house or to do that through Nelson's. And I don't know the answer, but I think it's something that we should definitely consider, because if we do that, we're going to have hubs, we're going to have all kinds of
I talked to Chris a little bit about that. I did say that we had that possibility. And one of the things that I think would be helpful is that they have a person that is specifically designated to route design that would really be able to maybe help look at options that would exist through that process. So I don't necessarily see that as a barrier to making a decision. That's just, my opinion.
I don't necessarily see it one way or the other. I just think it's something that we should all think about.
Fair enough.
So, if there are no more questions.
I think I'll just make a general comment. I
Okay,
appreciate
very good.
all the work that's been done in Nelson's. It sounds like a really reputable, great company. But this really came, at least in me, I don't know if I can speak for others, pretty quick. All of a sudden in May, we're hearing about this. Drivers are starting to hear it. They're maybe out of work. And that's concerning to me, that it came like that. And I'm having a hard time supporting moving away from status quo, quite frankly, because I think that there's still a lot of unknowns with this. And I don't know if all those are going to be answered, for me anyway, in the next 2 weeks when we have to vote on this. But I just want to say that I do respect the work that you've done on this. I know it's been hard. I know it's been a very difficult thing trying to find drivers and things like that. But I hope that in the future, when we have to make a pretty big decision like this, we don't get it in May. And I understand there's probably things out of your locus of control. Yet at the same time, we're talking about people's lives and people that have worked here for many years and whatnot, and I want to make sure we're respectful of that too as we move forward with this. Thank you.
John?
Yeah, one more question. Going along with what Tim said, it does feel sudden, and I understand that there are certainly plenty of circumstances that prompt that. I'm wondering then, we've all, as a board, had a chance to review the question and answer session as it was documented that you guys had with the bus drivers. Is there a way for the school board and possibly the school district to, as the bus drivers themselves have learned more about this process and also potential contract, is there a way for us to solicit more feedback from them? Again, that clearly would be outside of this meeting, but sometime before we make our decision?
Like
like
another
it's
meeting with
Like-
them? Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, we could certainly
any-
do that, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I feel like that would be really valuable for the
Yeah.
board, just reviewing that, reviewing those questions and answers. I guess I understand what some of the immediate concerns were, but like as a board, we're learning about this too, and we're about to go into a closed session and discuss details of a potential contract, and I feel like it would be useful for us to have a better understanding of how this is going to affect our current employees beyond the one session. However, I do appreciate that that information was provided initially.
You bet.
Okay, well, thank you guys
Thanks.
very much for coming. And Mel, you're up.
Good evening. I would like to, before I get started, compliment our drivers, as well as Erica when she picked up the transportation department. Those of you that don't know, the athletic department is actually the most dynamic part of the transportation department. If you think about it, their bus routes for the students is consistent. They have a consistent pickup time, they have a consistent drop-off time. Within the athletic department, there are hundreds, literally hundreds of bus trips that they take throughout the year that are very dynamic. Schedules are always changing. And, with Rob, he did an incredible job, and Erica picked it up, and our drivers always did an outstanding job. So since I had the mic, I wanted to say thanks, Jerry. Tonight, Dr. Onsager has asked me to come in and help you navigate and get a global understanding of the athletic code, or the athletic and activities code of conduct. Tonight I'll share with you the highlights or the key points of interest within the code and where to locate that information within the booklet. You can also find a copy online. I believe that Becky had shared a PDF of the code. If you have the copy with it, you may follow along with as well. So to start out with, the extracurricular athletic and activities code on page 2. The code details expectations as they pertain to all extracurricular activities for participation at Stoughton Area School District. This is a 12-month requirement. Participation in activities is earned in part by accepting and following the regulations contained within this code of conduct. Extracurricular expectations on page 3. All students participating in extracurricular activities are expected to do the following: fulfill their responsibility and obligations that go with extracurricular participation by adhering to school rules, school board policy, and local, state, and federal regulations. Agree that that studies come first and strive for the success in academics as well as in extracurricular activities. Recognize that students represent their school and community, are both judged by the students' actions. Therefore, students should demonstrate good citizenship in public and in school, as they should adhere to high standards of appearance, conduct, and performance. Complete the season of activity in good standing in order to qualify for and receive awards and honors. Respect and encourage excellence of performance and conduct among opponents as well as teammates. attend the required code meeting, and for those who are not able to attend, arrangements can be made through the athletic and activity office. Attendance rules on pages 3 and 4. In order to participate in extracurricular activities, a student must be in school and attending class the entire day of a contest and/or a practice. Students who have an absence have 2 days to clear this attendance issue up, or they will have to miss the next competition. A student will be exempt from this regulation if he or she has an absence excused in advance by one of the administrators or a designee. Absence occurring due to an unforeseen emergency may be appealed to an administrator. Students are prohibited from participating in extracurricular activities on the dates of unexcused absences, and this follows Board Policy 705.15. An administrative rule regarding interpretation of the School Board Policy 705.15, a student would be exempt from board policy if he or she made advanced personal contact and received prior permission from an administrator or designee for absences from the school. Students cannot report to school for extracurricular participation only. If a student wishes to leave school during the day of an activity, he or she must gain permission from an administrator or a designee. If a procedure is not followed, the student is considered unexcused and will not be eligible for the next activity. Unexcused absences from school may be reviewed as an extracurricular activity code of violation. Moving forward, academic requirements. You can locate scholarship and academic requirements on page 4. The following academic eligibility requirements have been approved by the Board of Education and include all extracurricular activities not specifically related to a class. These requirements are: a student participating in extracurricular activity must not be failing more than one class. A student must be passing 20 class hours per week. An example, 4 classes that meets 5 days a week. Area school district grades are checked first quarter, first semester, third quarter, and the end of the second semester. Incomplete grades are considered failing grades until they are made up. Ineligibility extends 15 school days from the dates grades are distributed to the students. A student who becomes academically ineligible may regain eligibility on the 16th scheduled school day by meeting the academic standards, followed by the 15 scheduled days and nights of ineligibility. Moving forward to citizenship requirements. Students are required to comply with state, municipal, school board, building policies, and procedures. Display respect for themselves, their peers, teachers, coaches, administrators, parents, and the community. Display appropriate behavior, language, effort, and sportsmanship in the classroom, traveling to and from contests, and in interscholastic competition. Not attend functions where underage drinking or illegal drug use occurs. Citizenship is generally considered conduct unbecoming. It's just the general morals and ethics that we adopt here within our community, and that's what the citizenship requirements are. Moving forward, on page 4 are our health, safety, and behavior requirements. Stoughton School District students are prohibited from drinking or possessing alcoholic beverages, using or possessing drugs prohibited by the law, smoking, chewing, or possessing tobacco products, stealing, vandalizing, or destroying equipment and property, use, possession, buying, or selling of a controlled substance, street drugs, and performance-enhanced substance. Behavior in violation of the governing criminal code that does not result in the student or athlete being charged with a felony. Behavior in violation of school board policy, building handbook, and the athletic and activities handbook for students and parents. Violation consequences. In the unforeseen situation that a violation occurs, this chart will help us understand the consequences for the respective violation for that student. And as you see here, it breaks it down really quick from a self-referral to a non-self-referral consequence. And I explained that in a previous demonstration as well. And you can locate that on pages 6 and 7 within the code. The violation suspension chart. The next step is to identify the length of the suspension based upon the number of events in which the student partakes in. This chart is approximate of a third of the season of all current or upcoming enrolled activities. Again, because you cannot get a third of 4. Again, it's an approximation of a third. And again, it's applied to each of the activities in which the student is currently, or if they're not currently in, their upcoming activities. Next slide. The WI statement of risk and eligibility can be located on pages 9 and 10. And what this particularly means is that by involving yourselves in athletic events, primarily there is the assumption of risk. Anytime that you do anything physically active, you take on the additional risk, and that's a requirement by the WIA to partake. And that statement of risk simply reads that physical activity yields many benefits but may result in catastrophic injuries. All sports involve movement, some involve contact. Sports may be a high-risk area for serious injuries. Although the Board of Education and the Stoughton Area School District endeavor to operate athlete activities in a safe manner, it is impossible to eliminate risks associated with physical activity and/or sports. Therefore, parents and athletes should consider these risks carefully before deciding to participate in interscholastic athletic activities. And again, you can locate that on pages 9 and 10. Moving forward, additional information. You can find these different sections within the code. We include that there as a resource so our families have a little bit better understanding. What the process is for reporting a violation, either if the information is brought to us or a self-referral. Description of what the state felony is. The review board can be found on page 9 in the event that somebody would like to appeal a decision. Practices, what our requirements are for practice, travel and conduct, equipment, care, athletic injuries, our award system, the different awards that we have. There's a section on the voluntary statement in which that a student can do their self-referral. We also use the statement for non-self-referrals, an opportunity for a student to give their statement in which that of what had happened. Again, the appeal procedures on page 15, the code of conduct summary on page 17, and then our alternative transportation portion where a student may be transported to and or from an event with their parent or guardian. These are the different things that you can find within the code. Moving forward, I wanted to share with you the violations throughout the years. This shows the trending of our identified code violations. Key point there is identified code violations. As we all know that there are several code violations that we're unaware of. Note these are not just drug and alcohol. These include other criminal charges, academic dishonesty, and so forth. For a while, the trend was decreasing, but the last 2 years, we've seen a dramatic increase. And when this slide was made, we were at 58. Unfortunately, we've had 2 other code violations since this slide was made. So it was a setback year for us, and it's a trend that we hope to help educate and prevent more violations moving forward. How we track it. It's done only within the athletic and activities office in each individual student's file. What that means is we have a hard copy file within our office, and what we do is we keep it, as you see below, it's not recorded within any campus to keep it away from their educational data. So it's away from their counselors, it's away from anything else that is educationally tracked. Only information or only inform the activities that the student previously or currently participates in, and it's not shared with counselors, staff, or other district personnel who are not directly impacted. And what does that mean? That means that it is their AP, their active coach or advisor, and myself are the only individuals when the information is shared. Processing a violation. How does the process work? Starts off with a meeting with the student, discuss the incident and fact-finding. Students write a statement of their involvement, as I previously mentioned. Discuss why we have the code to help them be safe and the most productive while they're here. We contact the parent to inform them of the violation and the pending suspension. And then at that time, we apply the code to all current activities or the next activity in the event of no current activities. Example being, say, a violation happens at this time of the year, in the summer. You can't apply to anything that they're not currently in, so it's their next pending activity. We have some situations where we know what the student's fall activity is going to be. Sometimes we'll have a student that will come out for the first time for a fall activity so they can serve their violation prior to maybe their winter activity. Let's see. Finally, we send a letter to the parent, coach advisor, the AP indicating the violation, suspension length, and the restorative justice possibilities. And what that simply means is we have the ability to reduce it by a student going through AODA screening and follow a recommendation. The self-referral are different things that we have that can reduce a length of suspension. Doesn't eliminate the suspension, but it reduces the amount of time. And so that's, in a summary, what you get with the athletic code. I'd like to open the floor for any questions.
There was an "and" there. Is there more to that that
No,
got cut off?
that was a typo, my
Okay.
apologies.
So in my question, I had read this before, and it was going to be about restorative justice. So you're saying it's just in reducing the length of time? So there aren't any other restorative
No.
type possibilities?
No. Well, again, the initial concept is if a student makes a poor choice, that if they make that self-referral within the 72 hours, that's that initial restorative justice, that, you know, I identified I made a mistake, I need to come forward and correct a wrong. And then taking forward the AODA screening and follow the recommendation. And in general, what that process is, they go to an independent contracted service. There are several in the area. We recommend up to 7 of them that are on our current list that we share with families. What they do is they go in and speak to the service provider, talk about their particular instance, and based upon that conversation, they'll make a recommendation. We understand that with substance use and abuse, that there are 3 levels. There's the experimental, somebody trying it for the first time. Then there's the recreational, somebody that does it occasionally, but just to pass the time. And then we know that there's the habitual. So through this screening, they're trying to identify which of those 3 levels that they're at. And they'll make a recommendation based upon that information. They'll have independent conversations with the parents, the student, and have a better understanding where they're at to help them through the process, so hopefully they don't make the same mistake again. And those are the different things that we have built within our code to help reduce it, because we feel value that hopefully that this extra step will help them make better choices moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, we know that age group your brain isn't developed for a long time, so you're going to do some stupid things, and you need to be able to learn from them.
And all the more reason to help them not to make those choices in the first place.
Right. So you talked about the link, the number of code violations has gone up. Is that simply because there's just a lot more activity happening, or is this due to some people now taking advantage of the self-referrals because they don't want to get into any more trouble? Or, I mean, can you speak a little bit about that?
My observation, I think it's a trend with the current students that we have, making more choices, more risky choices. I think we're going to continue, if we track this over a longer period of time, I think we would see some flow up and down with that. But just based upon conversations with kids when they come into the office, had a young man tell his dad, it's just what I do. Not going to change me. A little bit riskier students right now.
And then just because we did have a couple instances where some of the coaching staff, there was some questions. What are we doing about holding coaches to kind of the same standard as far as, substance use? And, are we doing anything about that, I guess? Or do we educate them as well?
I guess I didn't understand what you were asking.
Well, if we're going to hold kids to this code, it's pretty strict, and I'm just wondering, are we doing the same thing for the adults in the situation? I'm not saying that we're going to make them go take drug tests, but is there something happening? Because we did have a situation this past year where we had some issues with a coach, and so I'm just wondering, how do we follow up on that and make sure that those kinds of things don't happen?
Well, first of all, with the students, it's illegal. What we're talking about is the code. Many things, not many, a few of the things within the code are legal for the adults. So I don't want to get that confused.
Right, I understand that.
And when there are personnel matters, we involve the HR department and we handle those appropriately. We want to make sure that we have the right people leading our students.
Right. I guess I'm just thinking, like, is there, do we have some sort of a code for our coaches before they sign on, that there's some expectations?
I would believe it's the same that we have for all of our staff,
Okay.
the same expectations. Dr. Onsager, would you not agree?
Yeah, it's, any of our employees, it's the same type of thing of, there's some disciplinary action, let's say, for example, of using illegal drugs, so there's some different things that happen, but it's the same standards for all of our employees.
Okay, thanks.
I had a question, but before I want to go back to what Donna was saying. Even though, of course, we have the same expectation for all the staff, I also kind of think the coaches are in direct contact with specifically the athletes, and I also feel like they should have the same, not the same, but a different sort of expectations above what everybody else have, in accordance to what the athletes all have to also have. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but I mean, I am a coach and I need to behave even better and give a better example to the athletes. That's what I'm thinking. About what you're saying, kind of.
Well, I mean, I was just wondering if we had any,
code of conduct.
what is our
or something.
education? I mean, we have coaches that they're not employees of, they're employees of our district, but they only are for coaching. So are they provided with the same expectations and, that type of stuff when we first bring them on, so that they're aware?
They are.
Okay.
We definitely have pretty pointed conversations about how they represent our district.
Okay, good to hear.
Mel, I was wondering, do you have more data for that specific graphic that you showed with the code violations? How is it been growing? Because do you have something that show, for example, how many violations each student has made of those that are there, or more or
I have that confidential information.
No, I don't need the names, but what I'm saying is how many from first to fourth violation, for example, are included in that graphic, or what are the ages or the grade of the students that are. I just want to see, is there any pattern that you have seen? Like, the ninth grade students are the ones that, for example.
The older the students get, the riskier they become.
Okay.
But I would also, a casual observation, they become a little bit more careless as well. But involved in education, you know that as they get older, they will challenge themselves just a little bit more. I believe off the top of my head, we've had 3 quote-unquote terminal situations here at Stoughton in my time. What that means is that students have exhausted their eligibility by surpassing the number of violations that would get them eligibility back in order to participate. So again, we have all of that information again, but it's kept isolated from the rest of their educational system. All of those students graduated from Stoughton High School. We've had students that have had code violations that have went on and received scholarships. We've had students that went on and have received other awards. And so, we keep that as the only time that this information comes forward outside of that is if a specific award has that as a criteria, where it specifically asks, has this student had a violation?
No, I was just wondering of patterns, how, more.
Yep.
Like you say, older students probably will do that. Okay. Thank you.
Allison, did you have a question?
Yeah, just kind of, I'm just wondering that up there, it said that you send a letter to the parent, the coach or advisor, and
Yeah.
AP is an assistant principal?
Yep.
Is that what that stands for?
Yep,
Okay.
yep,
Just
yep.
trying to follow the acronym.
And the reason why it's shared with their AP, because, you know, it is part of the school function, so they know discipline-wise that, you know, something has been involved.
Okay.
Some happen within the school system, some happen outside the day. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, so you showed an increase in frequency of code violations. Is there anything exceptional about the types of violations? Like, are there any certain activities that are sticking out that the school
Our kids are
district would
becoming
be?
more and more risky, if that's what you're asking. We're seeing harder and harder substances being used, and they're using them in more and more risky ways.
Do you feel like that is
Concerning? Absolutely.
Is it something that the school board needs to, or you would advise the school board or the district take special consideration of?
Well, one thing is, I don't want to isolate this as students that are involved in extracurricular
Yeah,
activities. I
absolutely.
want to talk about all students and the safety and the well-being of them. The more educating that we can do about the risks and the consequences of those risks, the better we can. Very common sense there. You know, the more we can educate, the better. And, you know, I'm fortunate enough to be appointed to the Stoughton Wellness Coalition. If you're unfamiliar with that, it's a partnership between the city, the hospital, and the school district, with Ms. Felstead and Teresa as well, and Dr. Onsager sits on that as well. You know, we're trying to find ways to make Stoughton a healthier place, and one of our main missions is the underage or substance abuse, and yeah, we need to do a better job educating. We know the opiates is an issue. You know, there are new ways that kids are ingesting alcohol that, you know, we won't go into those details, but we need to stay on top of it.
So, so this particular trend, would you then feel comfortable saying that this is something that might be indicative of a wider trend in our community right now? Or, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot there, I'm just curious.
You know, I haven't examined it deep enough to give you a full understanding. I know that in having conversations with kids that have had violations, you get a good sense of who and what they are and where they're at with it. As I use that example of that young man that came in with his father, just, Dad, it's who I am, it's what I do. Get used to it, you know. And here's Dad with the look on his face like, wow, I never knew it was this kind of a problem, you know. That's one example of the different ones that come in. And so, you know, we just need to educate everybody on why it's a bad choice. You know, and as Donna talked about, they're developing, their brains are developing. We know medically that a developing brain, anytime that you put a chemical into it, you know, it hinders its development. So, you know, the more we can educate, the better. And the code is written as a preventative, not a punishment. Okay, you have to have a consequence. In order to help people make healthier choices, you have to have a consequence. And hopefully the consequence is enough that it prevents a life-changing consequence. We don't want to lose a student. We don't want a student to become so desensitized to the right and wrong choices that if they lose eligibility for a little bit, that's a lot better that we still have them so they can hopefully make a better choice moving forward. Because we have a lot of great success stories where kids have had the accident or the misfortune and have come forward and made better choices. And that's why it's there. There is an opportunity for growth and moving forward.
It's a educational opportunity, and it's also unfortunately getting to be more and more of a societal norm. If you remember Teresa's presentation to us, was it about a month ago, I think it was, where she listed all those different things, and you know, the percentage of kids that are getting substances at home, the percentage of students that an adult is providing them the substance, whether it's alcohol, etc. So this is a community conversation. And so we're doing things, Teresa and the Wellness Coalition did the reality maze. I think it was called the reality maze, wasn't it? For ninth graders, and those of you that had an opportunity to see it, it was, they were given a risky situation and seen the consequences, whether it was, you know, you were in a car and you were driving, or you were a passenger of somebody who got drunk and there was an accident, and so they had to work with the paramedics, or they had to work with, and it was some eye-opening things. It was the goggles that simulated having too much alcohol. It was the machine, and I can't remember what it was, it simulated a rollover.
Oh, the tumbler.
And showed what happened when you weren't wearing a seatbelt. So it's all those kind of educational things, but you know, it's not just confined to the school district and our students. We're a microcosm of the community, and so what we're seeing is also you know, a societal norm. Donna's been doing work for years with the group that posts the signs. Parents that host lose the most because unfortunately we also have a tendency as a society, a broader society, of saying, well, you know, as long as the kids are here and I collect their keys, then I know where they're at. So there's some of that mentality. So it's conversations that the Wellness Coalition is having community-wide, because it's something we have to address as a community.
Very well said.
Other questions? Thanks, Mel.
Thank you, folks.
And now we do have a policy up for first reading. Donna?
Yep, the wellness policy.
Yes. Dovetails very well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I assembled 75 sandwiches this morning for the first Vikings for lunches, and I said I'm not going to look at what's in these lunches because they do not fit some of the things we have been talking about under wellness. I just wanted to first start out by saying that this policy comes before us from the work of a lot of folks that aren't normally involved in the policy committee. We created a subcommittee to deal with that, and it was chaired by Bev Fergus and one of our parents, Charity DeVoe Brecken. And I also put down, I put in the issue paper the list of all of the committee members, and I just wanted to make sure that we acknowledge their efforts, because they worked, they met for a year several times and talked about a lot of things and digested a lot of information and material. And so, and it was really a big cross-section of people involved, our stakeholders. So I just wanted to give a shout out to all of those folks. The policy, as you are looking at, is actually a streamlined policy from the existing wellness policy. In our continual efforts to make our policies easier to read and a little bit more top level, and having everything moved into guidelines and practices, we ended up doing that with this policy as well. Our existing policy actually isn't very far off from what the USDA is recommending and requiring. The biggest hurdle is in enforcement and implementation. We can say all these things, but it just gets kind of hard. But it was timely that this came up at the same time that the board about a year ago received a lot of communication from parents that their kids were being bombarded with sugar and inappropriate snacks throughout the day, starting with getting on the bus, getting candy from the bus driver, and having a lot of reward system tied into food. And I stepped into the wellness subcommittee kind of late because Bev was no longer on the board. So I kind of had to get up to speed really quickly. And I think that there was a lot of really good discussion at that level about what things could be supported and what things could not. So with that, I'm just prefacing all this because I think the policy as you're looking is really more about this is what we expect as a board and a district, and that we are going to be compliant with USDA standards. The guidelines that you see, which we included, are more about how it's going to be done. And I mean, Sarah and Tim, we talked about this at our last policy meeting as well. It seems like there's going to be a lot of implementation things to work out. And they're doing that. And it may mean that we aren't going to do it all at once because we don't want to have to put a lot of effort and a lot of extra work on our staff. But the staff that were on this committee felt really good about what the guidelines that they'd come up with. And there's a few things that need to still be worked out and some committees that have to be staffed and some initiatives that have to be developed, and that's kind of the idea this summer. But we aren't approving the guidelines or the strategy. What we are here to do is to look at this policy, and if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to field them as well as any of the other folks that are here. This is not to be decided upon at this point. This is just the first reading. So with that, I would ask if anyone had any questions.
I do have one.
Yes, Yoli.
This in the section C, there's something about C1.
You in the guidelines?
In the guidelines, yeah, guidelines. Says the implementation in the classroom will be monitored and measured. Is any idea how that can be done?
They don't, I think that those are things that they're developing, but a USDA requirement is that we are monitoring them. Okay. And we don't know what types of things will come out. It could be just how many kids took chocolate milk during their break versus how many took white. How many are bringing snacks? How many are not? I mean, it's very simple things. Am I capturing that correctly, Judy? You're not. It's, data is data. Mm-hmm. But I think the idea is through this monitoring is that it can help you make better policies or, practices that will help kids. So the goal is that we want our kids to be well and to develop good eating habits. And we're not telling parents what they can send with their kid, but there is probably going to be some expectation that if you can't be sending things for other kids, because everyone has their own ideas of what they want to have. And we just have, more kids with allergies. We've got, it's become so complicated. Yeah. I was actually just talking with someone who had a Finnish relative come and stay with them, and they were just so shocked by the amount of candy that we give kids here, and they just they don't do that at all in Finland. And they said, what do you do for parties? And they said, we wrap up magic markers with a ribbon, and that's what we give them. Or it's more about the acknowledgement of you are special today. And I think we've kind of over time have just developed into this, food is good and let's reward everybody, but we also have to be careful about creating good relationships with food for our kids, because we don't want to have the opposite happen either. Michelle Madden, who's our Taher service director, was on this committee, and she just really was always really well grounded and brought us down to, and started getting really crazy about talking about goldfish crackers and cupcakes, and it's really good to have her on the team, and I think she's going to be really helpful in how this gets rolled out. Allison?
So, sorry, I just kind of went through, is part of this, I know we had talked at one point about birthday treats, so this would kind of encompass that. I'm of two minds on that, just because you sit there and you think there's a lot of kids that might be the only party they get.
Yeah, but we're not saying they can't have a party.
Right.
what we're saying is, how do you recognize the party?
How do you recognize
And there's been lots of ideas being bantered about. It's, maybe having one big group party, or, still having a party, but just trying to move away from food as being a reward and something special about it. I mean, you could bring in treats, but there's just some kids who, we've got an epidemic of youth with diabetes, and
We do.
there's just so many other things that have happened, and I think we've got to take it seriously, and it is going to be a shift. It was a shift for all of us, that, we spent a lot of time with it.
Funny, just a quick comment is just that we did a piñata for the end of the after school at Kigansa, and the kids thought that they were going to have a lot of candy. Actually, I didn't put any candy because I don't use to do that.
So what was
I
in the
don't do it.
piñata?
So I told them, it's not going to be candy in there, but it's going to be cool things. There's a lot of toys, just little toys. So I'm glad that.
Things without calories. Yeah.
So the guidelines can be changed within the policy committee without coming to the board if that becomes sort of.
They don't even go to the policy, but what we have asked, and I think administration has been doing that, is that if guidelines are going to change, pretty significantly, that we just be aware. But they are always tied to all of the policies.
Right.
So if anyone is looking at our policy online, then they would have access to the guidelines as well.
But I guess my point is that the policy, I think, is written the way that you guys are trying to write policies, which is concise and not, it doesn't get into the guidelines so
Right.
much.
It used to, and it didn't matter because it wasn't being, that wasn't being followed. And I mean, this is going to be a challenge. Tim was able to, he's got firsthand experience of what it's like. We kept pointing to Madison School District, who they've got like an 8-page approved snack list. And we're going to probably have that same, or variation of that snack list, but, as Tim said, well, we don't follow that. But, I mean, we have to try. And I guess that's what this is our first attempt. And there's just really there's some folks that have a lot of energy on the subcommittee, and that also are in the district that really they've got some great ideas. So, hopefully those things are gonna kind of bubble up and come out.
A quick question also. Would that committee or team have like a education plan or something for families? Like
Yes.
to also.
Yeah. One of the committee members has worked really closely with Derek on trying to get together a flyer that's going to go hopefully with central registration and would be available on the website, just kind of explaining it. I mean, there's going to have to be a lot of very thoughtful communication that occurs around this as well. However, it gets implemented, but we're not at that point yet. And we don't want to, be telling folks what they can do. We just want them to be, to put something in place that they feel that they can support. So, with that being said, this is where we're at right now, and it will come back at the next meeting for another read through.
You might as well keep the microphone and go right into the next item.
What is the next item?
The resolution.
Oh, okay, great.
That's you, yes?
Yes. So, I don't know if you all remember it was the last month, the meeting we had at Fox, I talked about some legislation that was coming in about guns and concealed carry, and that is something that we needed to be mindful of. And then we did have a community member email us about concerns as well recently. And I had been kind of following this along with the WASB folks, and they so kindly provided copies of 11 different resolutions that school districts had passed. And so I talked to Scott and asked if that's something that we think we could talk about or bring to the board. And so I borrowed a lot from other districts. I mean, they're all variations of the same thing, and came up with a resolution for us to review that, is just saying that we strongly oppose any legislation that changes what's legal right now. And I thought this was a good resolution. Since that time, there have been some more districts that have. It's interesting because that was this list that I added at the last minute. I'm sorry, I forgot to put that in the agenda, but we actually are listed by an organization called WAVE as a school district that was contemplating a resolution. This was back in March. I didn't know that we were, but they must have seen that we take action a lot. A resolution isn't binding or anything, but it's a strong statement. And if this is passed, we would put this on letterhead and have various members or the president sign it and then send it off to our legislators. And just so that they are aware that we really have a strong opinion about this. So we can't pass that tonight because it's not part of our two-step process, but it is here to review tonight if there's any changes that anybody would have to this resolution. We could make them now. Otherwise, it would come back to at the next board meeting and we would vote on it and act on it then.
Becky, there's a resolution that Donna has created that has Stoughton in there instead of Whitefish Bay. So I think it's the very bottom one of the one listed in Neptune.
This was the 11 districts or 12 districts.
Yeah, that was the list, yeah. The one that
So-
ours looks very much like the Whitefish Bay one, and this is a separate document.
Yeah.
It's the board resolution opposition.
Yeah.
It's the very bottom one, the last one in 7D.
Yeah. Yeah, that one.
The words all look the same. I pretty much replaced Whitefish Bay with Stoughton Area School District. The things that I would just ask about, we have, what we did at the bottom is strongly opposes any legislative initiatives at the state and federal level. I did notice that one of the resolutions that another district has passed, they use the word vehemently opposes. But it was most of these are pretty much, the same thing, just a little variation, but this is why we're talking about it tonight. If anybody has a chance to, or has some suggestions for any text changes.
Personally, I think what you have is great. I think
Yeah.
it's the idea that
Yeah.
we send something and be very clear that we're in opposition of this, and I think that accomplishes that. But can somebody explain to me why this is something that needs to come to a vote? I mean, it seems to be that it is, but it's not sort of a normal board thing.
The resolution, or?
Yeah, I mean, what if we got into a situation where something was moving fast and we needed to pass a resolution?
We
and
have
felt
done that in the
strongly?
past. We've had to pass resolutions the same night and be for timely.
So it could happen.
And I did request that we pass it, that we try to vote on it tonight, but we were trying to stick to our two-step process.
And we have time in this instance.
And we have time.
Okay,
do?
I was just asking.
They're not bringing it up for one?
I think right now, there's a lot of talk right now about the budget.
Okay.
And again, this isn't gonna change anything, it's just really putting us on record, that this is what we think. And the other thing that we would do, if you had a chance to look at the WASB website, under their legislative section, they do have a page that just says boards taking action, and anytime that someone's done a letter or written, done a resolution, they're posting it if we send it to them. And we're on there because we did a letter on the start date. And I don't know, is there something else? It seems like there was something else that we recently acted upon. But, we usually try to be, out there so that people know and can say, well, what is my district thinking about this? But a resolution is not going to stop any legislation that gets passed, unfortunately. And we've been in contact with our legislators and they're all in agreement with us. So if anyone does care to get involved, WAVE is having a meeting later this week where you're supposed to bring your phone and they're going to be calling people out in the state that are represented by legislators that are in favor of this legislation. So they're just making calls. I can put you in contact with that if you'd like.
Yes,
But
Are you
anyway,
asking to have that information shared?
I'll just forward you the email.
That'd be great.
Okay. Any other questions on the resolution? Okay, well, we do have one action item on the agenda. Is it possible to break for about 2 minutes before we get into this discussion, since it's 9:20
It's up to the board.
and we've been here? I could use to stand up.
Does someone have to make
Yeah.
a motion?
I don't think so.
Should
If
we
we're just
recess,
taking
or
a
do we
break,
just do
we?
it? Never done it before.
I don't know, we've never done it before.
Leave it to me, right?
Right?
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, you're the president, so I think you are right now.
Well, I don't
so-
know procedurally how to do that, so if it's difficult.
But you
then-
can you can move.
You can,
You
you
can do
can
it.
move to
I
accept
move-
motions, take a 2-minute break.
Yeah. You
Okay, I
entertain
would
a-
5-minute
entertain a motion to
recess?
take it, how, 5 minutes? A 5-minute recess.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, John.
Well, I think we're going to be. handbook recommendations, and typically we start the discussion with.
Because it's discussion action, you need a motion
With a
in
motion.
a second to have
Okay.
the discussion.
I would entertain a motion related to the handbook
I move that we
recommendations.
approve the handbook changes as proposed in our agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'm assuming we have discussion. Okay,
All right.
Allison.
So, today was that was my first meeting in employee relations, and we didn't really get to some of the discussion about the changes. So, does it make sense to move on that right now?
Well, we had our discussion at the last meeting, so we haven't made changes to the handbook as from the last time to this time.
Okay. All right.
I would actually propose, though, that we hear, Becky, there was some language that you had provided in an email to
That was
the
referenced earlier.
SEA that, could you share that with us and see, would it be something that we might want to put in?
It went to Jonathan, who's here tonight, so it didn't go to the whole SEA.
Right, right.
Yeah, okay, just one. But he was asking about the section that talked about performance evaluations under discipline and termination, that you could be disciplined or terminated for poor performance evaluations, and he wanted to know, to define that. And what I explained to him is, you wouldn't, just because someone had a poor evaluation, an unsatisfactory evaluation, it would have to be over time. It would have to be, they would have to have multiple people would have to try to work with them. And so that's what he brought up tonight. And personally, I can live with that. But I would also say, I think it can't be, we can't state that that's always the case, because there might be the exception, and we did talk about an exception during the Employee Relations Committee tonight, that particularly if you had a brand new teacher, first job, never been a teacher before, you might know really soon that this person just isn't cut out to do the job. That might be a little bit different. But even generally those people, we, for the most part, we work with them on an improvement plan. And this is not just educators. The handbook is for all staff, and we have put together improvement plans across the board, custodians. So it is not, what they were concerned about is that you get one, what might be considered an unsatisfactory performance review, and then you could be terminated, and that's not the case.
Well, what would the specific language be that we're talking about inserting then?
What I
You had some specific language, I thought.
Right, and that was what I had written to him, and what I wrote to him is that I said termination would not be a consideration unless this was a pattern, and no improvement was seen, and the unsatisfactory performance continued over time. I also said there is no black and white definition. I would be fine with tweaking that language a little bit. That's, it doesn't leave a lot of room in case there is that one exception to the rule, but I think we could write something that would be more understanding.
That's in 50, 4-5, or what number is that?
I think it's right, 50.
I think it's 5045.
I'm just trying to figure out where it says about the plan.
Oh, number 2.
It's number 2, unsatisfactory
Okay,
annual
right.
performance evaluation.
I guess I was distracted by the green there. So could you just say, that,
I think we could almost add just a footnote.
yeah, termination would not be a consideration unless this was a pattern, no improvement was seen, and unsatisfactory performance continued over time. And then in parentheses, although there may be exceptions.
Yeah. Yes.
case by case or something like that. I don't know, that seems like
Or
you're
I think if you even
covering-
just, start by saying in general.
In general.
This is the way it is.
We have to have the specific language tonight if we're going to approve this, is that correct? I mean,
We do.
otherwise, it's
So
not
we need-
comfortable to approve it saying.
Right, we wouldn't
we'll
do
tweak it
that.
later.
The intention, yeah.
So we wouldn't be doing that. So would you say the in general before the termination part, the thing I just read off?
Yes. It could read as a footnote to number 2. It could say, in general, termination would not be considered unless this was a pattern, no improvement was seen, and the unsatisfactory performance continued over time.
Yeah, in general seems a little vague. I mean, what if we want to say like in general, wherever possible, or in general with few exceptions, or, because if you say in general, then it just kind of throws open the door, it feels a little bit like, I don't know.
Well, I think that's the intent, because we're saying that there are some cases, we just can't always say that it's always going to be overtime.
I know, I'm just trying to read this like I'm an employee reading this, and, it doesn't make me feel a lot better that it says in general.
But is there any other place where, so after you read that in general, blah, 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 you can find the exceptions?
Well, I think that Jonathan actually spoke to us at public comment and said that he actually read that and said that that was something that you could live with. Can I ask that to you in the audience?
I'm happy to respond.
Well, I mean, it's all comes up or down.
Tonight.
No, but I mean, I think I heard that's what you said. We would be happy, we would be okay with this, and you read it.
But that was before the in general was added. How's that feel?
That was before, yeah, so that was made it even.
I mean, if we can,
think what you
if
said-
you're saying the board can do.
We wouldn't allow it for the bus drivers.
So,
Yeah.
Right, so we can't do
Yeah.
that, but.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know board could do whatever at that time.
It was tongue in cheek.
Sorry.
Becky has a,
I just want to also point out one other section in the handbook. We do have an appendix, which is Appendix B, and it's called the Informational Flow Chart. And it says, the following is meant to provide options to discuss district decisions that employees do not agree with or have concerns with. So I just want you to know, I mean, people don't just get fired.
No, we know.
And if they feel like they are just getting fired, we've even outlined what those steps would be. The first one would be to go to their administrator or supervisor and have a discussion. Then they would come to my role and have a discussion. Then they can go to Tim, his role, and have a discussion. And depending on what this is, and with an educator, this would be a non-renewal, it wouldn't be a termination for performance, it would be a non-renewal. Then you also have an opportunity to go to the board, especially if you are going to access the grievance procedure. So, I just don't want you to feel like it's one and done. And sometimes I think that's what educators think too, is that we can just say, you're done, and we can't.
it's my impression that, including language like this would be with the intention to give reassurance to educators that that the district is going to do their best to support them as employees and help them better themselves and better their careers. So I feel like if we're adding language and going out of our way to add language that builds or shows that we're trying to build that trust, and if then the district is also always trying to encourage staff to, or that there is an avenue for them to try and better themselves in their careers, then all of this feels like us moving in a direction where we're trying to just make sure that everybody has a certain level of trust. So does that?
So what is it, what is?
Oh, I feel like we're moving in the right direction.
By?
Adding the language and.
And is that without in general or with in general? Because that is what I think we're talking about.
I think personally in general is okay.
What about with few exceptions, though? Because I have seen that in other
I think that makes it
contract
feel
language.
tighter to me. Because I think that's what
mean,
you're saying, is that there are a few exceptions that, you know, and I don't know that you can enumerate those, because there could be some that you just can't think of. You know, you
And
can't
I'm
have
just trying to
a list
avoid
necessarily.
keeping the district, keeping the board in a box that, where someday there could be an exception.
Right, well, I would be more comfortable if it did say in general with few exceptions, but that's the way I feel. I don't know how everyone else feels. That's why we're discussing.
Well, that, I mean, we actually have to make a motion to
Amend your
amend it.
motion and a second, and then you have to vote on the.
I have to accept the friendly.
Right.
So someone needs to do that.
All right, so make a friendly amendment, is that what I say?
You have to ask me if it's,
Yeah.
if I would take my motion away to approve the handbook as
Okay.
presented. And then someone needs to second it, and then we vote on it, and then someone makes another motion with the, with the amendment that we just
Okay.
talked.
All right, I am requesting that you withdraw your motion to approve the handbook as read. Is that what you were saying?
And someone needs to second it,
I second.
and then all those in favor, I'm not doing, this, usually we doing this, Joe, I'm
Right.
sorry, this.
No, I'm perfectly happy that you're walking.
Well,
me through
I'm
it.
not going to do it, because I'm not the vice president, so you go ahead and carry on.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes. So now the situation is we need another amendment,
So you need another motion
another motion.
to approve the handbook with that in general inserted, and you needed a second to continue the further
So
discussion.
what is the language that someone wants to propose?
Before you do that, so you don't have to withdraw this again, I just wanted to point out, I don't know if this would be something that you're considering, but the other issue that Jonathan brought up was not including the compensation plan in the handbook. And I would tell you that the compensation plan has not been in the handbook. The only reason it was put in is because we received feedback from an educator when we were collecting feedback, asking that it would be. So, again, that is from, at least from me sitting here, and I don't know where you're at with that, but I have no problem removing that from the handbook because it's never been in there
And we
anyway.
can do that at this point.
Well, now you can, now it's all
Right.
part of
So
the
if
same.
you're
I'd
gonna
like to
do
make a
that, if
motion.
you're gonna do that, do it all in one, so you
Right.
don't have to go through the same
Right.
process again.
I'd like to make a
That
motion.
feedback, yes.
I would move that we, that we approve the handbook as presented with the following two exceptions. In section 50.45, item number 2, we add language that states, in general, comma, termination would not be a consideration unless this was a pattern, comma, no improvement was seen and the unsatisfactory performance continued over time, period. I would also move that we do not include the compensation plan in the handbook.
Second.
So, can I ask, is there any other point in the handbook we're going to talk about? Or-
There might be, but we
I-
can't have discussion unless there's a motion on the table.
So we could potentially be doing this again if somebody's got another change they want to make. Is that
Well,
accurate?
are there any others?
I think that's what Tim's asking.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. I mean, the feedback that I'm getting is that there's some pushback about this 4:30 end time on Wednesdays. but
So that was one of mine.
That's the feedback I'm
Just the
getting,
feedback.
you know.
And can you clear the policy about lunch period? So,
Sure. And again, this came from the SEA, so this was a teacher perspective. This concern that was addressed in the handbook was for non-educators, because the statute that is also referenced in the handbook is the statute that says we have to give teachers a 30-minute limit. Yes,
so they
it's a law.
can't be mandated to do 30 even if we pay them?
We can't do
We
that.
can't mandate?
No,
Okay.
no.
I just
So
need
that's-
clarification.
We can have this discussion if someone actually, if we accept this motion, because we're not technically supposed to be discussing the handbook.
No, John seconded.
Right, okay, okay, so now we can, sorry, I didn't hear that, I
Yeah.
forgot that part.
So what you are saying about his question is that the time for lunch was not changed for educators?
The 30-minute, in the handbook, the 30-minute, they changed from will to may. And
Right.
partly that was for support staff who preferred to work the 4.5 hours and not take the lunch instead of taking a lunch in the middle of it. The SEA questioned, they were concerned with the change to May, that there was a concern that, well, then that's going to mean that teachers could be assigned to teach over their lunch hour. They would not be given the lunch hour. What Becky had said is in that section, state statute is referenced. That state statute says teachers have to have the half-hour lunch. So we don't have the choice of even saying to them, work through their lunch. State statute requires us to give them a lunch. So there's no question about whether they'll have one or not. It's state statute.
Now, if they choose to work with students during that time or whatever, that's their choice.
Right.
But we can't assign them. Yeah.
And has it been clarified, because I have heard from some teachers that is a concern, from teachers, from educators, so.
I've not heard anyone complain, and
That's what I was.
I was not aware of any issues with this. I mean, this has been something, even with schedules, the high school's a good example because they have, well, River Bluff too, they have multiple noon hours, and so to make sure the staff get their 30-minute duty-free lunch, yeah, we're sure. I feel like we're pretty careful about that.
So the only other one was, and Joe referenced it, the Wednesday from 4:15 to 4:30. And I totally understand the need for that extra 15 minutes. And I'm understanding it can't be. But is there some discretionary authority principals have? Because I also know the challenges of work, two working parents and picking up kids and things like that. So
The principals have the discretion. They don't need to keep staff to 4:30 if they don't need to. The reason we did the 4:15 and now 4:30 was we wanted to give staff a heads up that your meetings may go to that long. And that if you're arranging daycare, that would be the time that you tell your daycare provider, it may be Wednesdays, I'm a little later. And so we're trying to give people a heads up, of the courtesy of, if I'm talking to my daycare provider, they know up front that it could be Wednesdays. If I'm staying later than normal, it would be a Wednesday. It wouldn't be, for the most point. So we're trying to give that courtesy type of thing. Staff, when there's not meetings, our teaching staff have what we call a professional day. So as soon as the students leave, if there's no obligations, if there's no commitment to be working with staff, if there's no parent meetings, et cetera, they can leave. And so we operated when we started the handbook on that professional day because we all know that our staff put in countless hours. And so we went away from punching a clock. We went away from our staff being required to be there from 7:45 to 3:45 or whatever the time was. We're trying to use the discretion of, they're professionals, and as long as they can get the work done, they can leave.
I think one of the reasons I struggle with it, well, there's two reasons, is because I'm hearing about it from some people that they would rather we didn't have that in there. And then as a person that's not in education, that's just hard for me to understand. They don't do that at my work. Say, I'm done at 5. They don't say, well, you can go home at 6 on Wednesdays. So it's goofy to me because
But
I'm
you
not
must
in
have-
the world of, other than being on the board and watching this all happen.
But do you have a start time and an end time?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference. We have a start time. I mean, our educators have to be here when the students are here and ready to go. And then they can leave anytime after they're done with their obligations with the students. If the students need help after school, they need to stay. Parents need to talk to them, they need to stay. But if there are days when none of that's occurring, none of the kids need them in their classroom, they can go home, which is contrary to what we had when we had a collective bargaining agreement. We said you had to be here by 7:45 and you had to stay here until 4:15. We don't do that anymore. Now we say if you can leave earlier, we're okay with that. But there are going to be some days when you're going to have to stay longer, and Wednesday is going to be the one day during the week when we're going to expect everyone to stay longer.
Well, I think that would be helpful, to most people to know that it's Wednesday for sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I just can understand, you know, as a family of 2 working parents, that 15 minutes sometimes really throws a wrench in somebody getting to pick up kids someplace, you know, so.
And we talked about that, and I don't think the answer was that no one is, I mean, if someone has to leave, they're just gonna leave. No one's saying,
And are there repercussions if they
just-
have to leave, or?
I think in contrast to just standing up and walking away at 4:15, which is what's happening in some cases now, right?
Right.
That it's just maybe, you know, I need to go. Do you have a problem with that? I mean, I think there's just gotta be better communication.
Well, and what I would say is if it's the same person leaving every meeting at 4:15, yeah, that's not really the intent of this. But, you know, we talked, if a daycare provider is just saying, you know, I can't stay that 15 minutes longer today, yeah, they're going to understand that, and people would be able to leave. It's just on a regular basis. If we're going to have a meeting that long, we would ask that they would stay there that long.
So as I said, I mean, I would just hope there would be some discretionary for it. It sounds like there is,
Yeah, there is.
in extenuating circumstances. I mean, I think one of the things you always have to understand about teaching is, it sounds nice, I think it's great that you allow staff to do that. I mean, I really commend you for that. As a teacher, you know, there's limited times in the day I can go to the bathroom because I can't leave my class.
I couldn't work where you work.
And, you know, it's one of those things where it's almost apples and oranges at times when you're trying to. So that flexibility in time is, I think that's really nice. And I just want to make sure that continues. As well as understanding there are professional obligations as well. And giving principals and others the discretionary authority to make those judgments. It's important. Thanks. So I appreciate your work on that.
Are there other things that people want to raise? If not, I just have one more thing that has been raised with me, which is 50.45, number 5. It was pointed out that there's some language that's not all that clear, and I sort of agree. The language is commonly accepted moral or ethical standards. What is that? Is that a legal definition, or?
Yep. When you continue reading in that section,
I did.
it does define it, and it's statute. So we're looking at immoral conduct as defined by statute 11531.
Okay, well then I'm comfortable. So, the motion was that these 2 changes would be made. Is there more discussion, or are we ready to? Are we ready to vote?
I was asking, Becky, do you need this back again for the?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Is this a voice?
I think it's roll call.
Is this roll call?
I don't think it's roll call, is it?
I don't
It
know.
can be if,
It's policy.
I think.
Yes, it's roll call.
okay.
Ms. Rudd?
Yes.
Mr. Coughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Sword?
Yes.
Ms. Tarpinian?
Yes.
Mr. Gubon?
Yes.
Ms. Fitzgibbon?
Yes.
Vice President Fred?
Yes. And that concludes our action items for the evening. We do have reason to move into contemplated executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Sub 1, Sub E, for consideration and review of potential bus transportation contract, including possible negotiation thereof. Could I get a motion to move into
So
closed
moved.
session?
So moved.
Second.
This is, I believe, the roll call as well.
Ms. Fitzgibbon?
Yes.
Ms. Rudd?
Yes.
Mr. Gubon?
Yes.
Mr. Coughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Sword?
Yes.
Ms. Tarpinian?
Yes.
Vice President Fred?
Yes. A couple minutes and we'll go upstairs.